So part 3, did you make it here directly? Did you shortcut or did you go through the first 2 videos? Doesn't really matter. I'm Jeff, Not Dead Yet Adventures is my channel, and I'm a nomad, been on the road for 3 years, and these are 3 videos that I would have liked to have heard a decade ago or so and would have helped me get out of the chair, get on the road sooner and more efficiently and more comfortably. So part 1, I talked about doing a self-assessment, your health, your state of mind, your friends, your family, your everything, right? Part 2, I talked about budget, and it was more about scrutinizing your budget and where you spend money and understanding, that everything you spend has a cost, and everything you spend you have to deal with. And for me, the big realization was I was spending a lot of money that I was just throwing away, in a week or a month or a year later. And so being, hyper-focused and going through that is an important thing for me. And understanding, how the budget and, my self-assessment about where I was at in life and where I wanted to be and where I want to be in 5 or 10 years, how that all plays down to making the plan now. And to me, this is the best part, right? This is the exciting part because, whether you want to go pet bears in the Alaska, like the guy did with his girlfriend before the bear ate him, or you want to go, adopt 1 million cats in Florida and be the crazy cat person on the block, or, it doesn't matter what you want. The plan is your plan. And it, for me, the important part of the plan was actually something I, unlike the other 2 topics, it's something I spent a lot of time on before I hit the road. And it was figuring out what my daily plan would be. I want to get up every day and do what? Because I needed to find something that was affordable, meaning cheap. I needed to find something I enjoyed and I could do every day. So that's kind of a hard task, right? Walking in the woods is good, but I'm not going to do that every day. I get kind of bored of it after, a month, and then I crave it again. And I wasn't really in the physical shape because that went back to my assessment, right? I wasn't really physically able to go walk in the woods every day. Now I could go hit a park every day, but that's not going to get me up. If I could go out and hike the mountains like I used to when I was a young man and in better shape, then that would be, something that I would definitely put on my plan list and execute and do. But, I'm old, I've got other issues, right? And I'm not going to just walk into the woods like I used to, and disappear for 2 or 3 weeks at a time because, the likelihood of me coming out, is gone way down. So the plan is up to you. Take your budget, take your self-assessment, and now the plan. Do you want to go, there's tons of options here. Oh, I get so excited talking about this because there's really no right answer. There's no wrong answer. The only answer is what's going to make you happy. And what I discovered as, worrying about my mental health going forward, worrying about this, worrying about my budget and everything, it all plays together. So what I discovered is as a man, I think it's a little different for women, but there's 3 things I think men need to be successful, especially later in life. You need a tribe, you need a group of men to associate with, hang out with, talk to on a regular basis, have those voices in your head. And there's tons of studies and, anecdotal, I can never say that word, little stories that, collaborate this, but there's also like hard science, right? And so you need a group of men to associate with. Ideally, I think there was a study out of the Bay Area in California that said twice a week, 2 to 4 hours a week or something like that. You need to hang out with men. You need to, collaborate or talk with or associate. It's just part of being healthy. You need to run with some sort of pack. Now, the idea of being a lone wolf is great, but I mean, when you really think about the existence of lone wolves, they're not what everybody kind of dramatizes them into be. They avoid fights, they avoid this, they avoid that, they avoid people, they avoid packs, right? They avoid everything that is any sort of like danger or fun or, and what do? They go hammer a small rabbit or something and eat that. And, they Yeah, they're solitary creatures and they just kind of wander around, but they're not out living an exciting life, even for a wolf, right? They're not, rubbing shoulders with cubs or other wolves. It's really not the dream lifestyle that I think people fantasize it to be, or I'm at a loss for words there, but people build it up to be this great thing. It's really, when you dig into it, it's really not there. And there's a lot more than, the simp or the alpha. There's a lot of gray area there. So I'm not advocating for any of that. I'm just saying that I discovered there's 3 things I think men need to be successful in life. And one of them is a tribe of men that you need to collaborate with, talk with, and such. The other being a sense of purpose. You need to have a sense of purpose. And there's a lot of studies about this. If you want to live longer, you need a sense of purpose, a sense of connection. And one of the most recent studies going back over Blue Zone data, it's really interesting because it's not necessarily a lot of it talks about mobility, right? Your leg strength, how strong your legs and hips are, have a direct correlation to how long you're going to live because of your mobility. And the more mobile you are later into life, the longer you live. But also deep connections with somebody, whether it's a spouse or a community, but having some sort of deep connections with somebody. And that goes into a sense of purpose, right? So you need a sense of purpose, you need a tribe, and then you also need some pride. You need to be able to stand up with your shoulders back and be proud of something. And what I discovered when I went down this rabbit hole is you can be proud about something you did in your past and it won't really help you now or in the future, right? It's kind of like, okay, yeah, it's a little bit back there, but really doing something every day with your hands, a sense of accomplishment, a sense of, I did this, I did that, really builds that little inner pride, that, healthy level of pride, even if it's making a frittata or washing the windows, something physical seems to be the most effective from what I gleaned, from the wizards on YouTube and whatever else I could, books I read and stuff, counselors I spoke to. Doing something to create a sense of pride, it keeps people from spiraling into that depression, spiraling into that, leave me alone, that isolationism. And that's really the road to a dirt nap, the accelerated road to a dirt nap. And I'm not in a hurry to get on that fast track to the dirt nap. I want to get on the fast track to the blue zone, right? I want to hit that blue zone quality of life or longevity. And that really comes from, and there's more to it, right? There's diet, there's health, there's all this, right? But if you start down the path with those 3 and then you start going, okay, I really want to live longer. What do people that live longer do? Right? They get up every day, they have a sense of purpose, they have strong legs, right? And there's all these little tidbits. You start putting that together, you can develop your plan to live longer and find something you enjoy to do every day. Can you afford it? And now, what everybody's all worried about, like expats, future expats and nomads, they're all where, how much money? All that to me is trivial because the first 3 things I talked about here in these videos are far more important to me. The self-assessment, where am I, what do I want to do, what do I want my quality of life to be like, and then financially, what can I afford, can I control my spending, can I control my, frivolous spending, can I control my addictions, or am I going to be out, every loose minute buying, that tart I really want, or, over there buying cake or potato chips every 5 minutes. All those little things, they're little leaks out of my budget, and I don't want any leaks in my budget when I'm going abroad. So if I would have lived that budget before I left America, that would have helped me. That would have made the transition so much smoother, easier, and created a higher chance of success because I wouldn't have been stressed over my budget. Not so much the volume of money, right? I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about the actual daily, expenditures of budget. I don't want to be walking around with an envelope stressed over, okay, do I have enough money for a burger? And then looking at tomorrow's envelope going, okay, if you're not familiar with the envelope form of budgeting, check it out. It's very effective. I wouldn't recommend it long term, but it's a good tool to use to, stabilize and refine your budget. for me, it was all about just creating that binary and creating a level of disgust in that, like, there's no way I'm buying another drive-through coffee because that's just going to make me fatter and, you know, do this and this, and it's taking away from my future. And so being able to prioritize my future because I'm eating less sugar, getting the long thought process as opposed to the emotional responsive thought process, all these things play in. But the plan is what we're talking about here and now, and the plan is the exciting part. Where do you want to go? Because there's almost nowhere in the world you cannot afford to live if you're living in America or UK. There's pretty much everything is at your fingertips. It's just a matter of what do you want to do every day. If you want to hike mountains every day, I wouldn't say living in XYZ is the right answer. If you want to, you know, go to the opera once a month, you know, living in the Baranga or the province of the Philippines is probably not the best answer, right? I would choose someplace like Albania where they actually have an opera house, right? Or if you're on the low end of the budget, if you're on a higher end of the budget, choose a higher end of place. But when I discovered after a couple of years on the road, it really refined what I want in a city and what I want in my daily life and where I would be happy and satisfied living long term, life got really easy. But it all went back to something I didn't do before I left. I didn't make a hardcore list and I didn't practice the lifestyle I wanted to live before I left America. So what concerns me, or what I would be concerned with, I should say, is I have this hypothesis, this idea, this fantasy of the life I want to live, but if I don't practice it and understand its nuances and understand its, you know, actual benefits and drawbacks, when I go out and do it, when I leave America, I sell everything and I move someplace, 6 months later I may go, oh, this is not what I want, this is not what I want, and then I get grumpy, angry, and I become that sour expat, and then I become that, you know, angry old guy and dissatisfied. And now I'm left like, what do I do now? I sold everything and I moved abroad and da, right? So it doesn't work out very well unless you get lucky. Now, what the process I went through personally was I moved abroad and then I sorted it out because I just kept moving. I was slow traveling. And slow traveling may be good for you. You may want to be more of a nomad, you know, and there's all these other options. The thing I would stress is to sit down and explore, who am I? Where do I want to be? What budget do I have? And what do I want to do every day? And that's the plan. What do I want to do every day? If my plan is to, you know, sit in a basement and play video games or watch videos every day and eat Hot Pockets and drink Starbucks, I wouldn't leave America for that. I would just refine my budget and my plan around that, find someplace, you know, cool to live or warm to live, whatever I prefer, you know, find someplace with a basement and build my future. The future I'm building and I wanted to build was, there's places in the world I never dreamed of being able to go to, and I discovered by assessing my health and my mental well-being and my future, and then assessing my budget, and now I'm making the plan. I get to go see and do things I never believed were possible. I've hit things on my bucket list that were just pipe dreams. They weren't even like in the realm of reality. There was no, you know, I wouldn't even sit and talk about doing them because they were so far from, you know, a believable idea, and, you know, I'm knocking them off like faster than I can imagine. And I'm doing it because I have a plan and my daily budget and my daily plan, and everything works together, and it coalesced into, you know, a lifestyle and a season of my life I didn't think was possible. And that's probably the only reason I'm taking the time to make these 3 videos, is because I did not believe this was possible 6, 8, 10 years ago. If I did, I would have done it then. And so when I make these videos, I'm talking to myself 6, 8, 10 years ago. I'm not necessarily talking to you. You may have your life all sorted out. You may have a wife, you may have kids, you may have this, you may have that. But I'm making this video for me 6, 8, 10 years ago because I didn't believe this was possible. If you have a stable income and you're efficient in your planning, the more you can refine it down, the more opportunities open up to you. And have opened up to me, I should say. And the more deliberate I get with and more specific I get with my goals, the easier they are to accomplish. And it's really, yes, there are days, people don't understand. They see I'm sitting here in this beautiful place, right? But, there are weeks I spent living in a capsule hotel in Japan. I was in Tokyo and my budget got crunched, a bunch of bookings fell through, and so I'm living in this little tiny capsule hotel in Japan for, and I'm eating on 1,000 yen a day, and it's not a good, like most people would not appreciate that. Me, I loved it. I loved it because it's like, hey, look what I can do, right? I'm doing this. And there's other times in my travels where I've lived, very austerely, very, frugally. And people don't appreciate that because I don't share that. Inside, that's also a sense of accomplishment for me because it's like, look, I survived that hard time. I made it through this. I lost my wallet with all my rent in it. I lost my 2 credit cards, right? I got on a flight to the wrong city. I booked a flight to the wrong city. I booked a hotel over there and I landed over here. I mean, that just happened. I was online, I was booking a flight to this country I'm in now. I was to UAE, and I'm thinking Abu Dhabi, but when I was booking the flight, when reality I wanted to go to Dubai. So I booked the flight to Abu Dhabi instead of Dubai, so I get off the flight in Abu Dhabi, and it's like, okay, well now what do I do? And I didn't catch it until the last minute. But I just dealt with it, and it was fun to me. It was like, okay, well, there goes that. Okay, so how do I get from there to there, right? And I didn't even discover it because I made this mistake, a week prior, 2 weeks prior when I booked the flight. And I didn't even really discover it until, a few hours before I got on the flight in Rome. I'd already gone, right? So it was just kind of funny to me. Yeah, shit just happens. But the plan, what is your plan? Your plan is your plan, right? Figure out what you want to do in life, what you want the next season of life to look like. What kind of area do you want to live in? Do you want to be out with people that speak only English? Do you want to be in an expat bubble? Do you want to stay in America? Do whatever you want, I think is possible if you have a fixed income, if you've done the bare minimum in life to set yourself up. If you're just on Social Security, there's a lot of other options to explore. I would not go any place where I'm expecting to live on 100% of my budget. That's the one caveat I would say is I would plan to live on a quarter or 3/4 of your budget at the most. Always have that 1/4, emergency fund or whatever every month that you're putting away. Is my opinion. If you have $1,000 to spend a month, $1,000 that hits your account or whatever a month, I would plan to live on, $750. So if you have 4,000, I would plan to live on 3,000. Have that as the plan, right? And that way you can stack money away and be flexible and be mobile. And, especially if you're going to live abroad, I meet people who are paycheck to paycheck, and that is a scary situation to be in. Scary situation to be in, and I would not recommend that at all. And these people out there with these budgets that are just, make your own decision, make your own, do your own research. The valuable numbers for me when assessing a place where to live or not to live is what is the cost of living index, what is a rent I will be paying, because I'm a short-time renter. I'm going to be paying an elevated rent. I'm not getting the year-long contract. I'm not staying there for a year. I'm not signing a year-long lease. So I'm going to be paying a premium for that short-term lease, whether it's 2 weeks or a month. And then the cost of food, right? What's a meal out cost and what's a meal out that I will eat cost? And then what can I buy groceries for? And all that comes back into the cost of living index. And then you have all the accessories, right? If you're going to live out of town, you got to get to and from where you're living. Are you going to, transportation costs? And all that is real complex. And the more you live it, the more comfortable you get with it, and the more comfortable, you can be with your budgeting. If you go back to my video, the $3,000 global nomad budget, I break it down pretty plain terms, right? And I keep it very fluid and very flexible because I don't want to be tracking every penny, and I don't want to be like going to the store going, okay, I have this much, and okay, if I keep a cushion and I keep it flexible and I stay honest to myself, I look in the mirror and be honest and like, hey, you cannot afford that today, right? You cannot afford that. Like I wanted a haircut. I'm walking by this place like 3 weeks ago and I wanted a haircut, need a haircut again. But it was like 200 dirham and I didn't get my haircut, right? Start putting a hat on. When you see me with a hat, it's because I need a haircut and I haven't found a place I want to get my haircut at, or, I'm just being lazy. But I could have paid it was actually like $250 to get my haircut, or I stumbled across a place over here and I paid five dirham. I actually gave the guy 10, but it was just 5 dirham for the haircut. And, insanely cheap, right? Or I could pay $250. A soda, I could go downstairs, get a soda for 20, or I can go across the street, or actually down the street, pay $250. So $250 or 20. Which can I afford, and which will I afford, and which should I probably shouldn't be buying a soda at all, right? But lately I've been hooked on these lemon sodas. They're pretty tasty. Anyway, make your plan, live your plan, and then where becomes readily apparent. Where is the easy part? When you have your plan laid out, the where is easy. When you know what you want socially, when you know what you want climate-wise, when you know what you want activity-wise, when you know what you want to do every day for the next season of your life, minus the little trip or weekend or special day or whatever, but your basic everyday existence, when you have all that laid out, the where is the easy part. The where is the super easy part. And, food and culture are probably the most important things to me, culture being the most important. I didn't end up in the Philippines because at the end of the day, the culture I was experiencing was not something I wanted to deal with every day. I'd much rather, my time in Malaysia, I'd much rather go to Malaysia. I've only been to Thailand a little bit, to the tourist areas. And then in Eastern Europe, there's a ton of places I'd be very happy living. Albania, Poland, Romania, Portugal, I'd be very happy. It'd be a little tough financially for me in Portugal. And there's a ton of other places I haven't been yet that I want to go explore, where I imagine I would be very happy because the culture is very similar. What I didn't like in the Philippines is everywhere I went, people were demanding my time. People were constantly yelling at me across the street, strike, and they demand a response. And if you don't respond, you're that guy. I was walking down the street in the Philippines and a guy wanted to talk to me. And he got in front of me, he reached out and grabbed my beard. And it's like, if you're gonna grab my beard and we don't know each other, it was a little longer, it's like, we've got issues, right? And he was so upset with me because I wouldn't stop and talk to him. He had no idea what I was doing. He didn't care. All he cared about was my time was his time, and he's some stranger on the street. Didn't care that I was going from A to B to get something done, to get back to the hotel, to get on in a Grab to go to the airport, right? Didn't care. He was genuinely upset with me. And the next time I saw him a couple of weeks later, he let me know he was upset with me because I wouldn't stop and talk to him. And that's not a place I want to be, right? Bucharest, I had the same problems in one neighborhood in Bucharest, the downtown, like Old Town area. You know, so I wouldn't enjoy Bucharest, is my guess. Maybe on one of the outer areas, the outer neighborhoods, maybe. But there's many other places in Romania I really loved. Târgu Mureș, yeah, the whole list of places, right? So the where is easy. It's not a struggle to find a place you will love, or slow travel, or nomad, right? There's all kinds of examples of people out there doing it, and the core comes down to, what do you want in life? Where do you want to be? What are your goals? And what are you going to do every day? If you expect to go golfing every day, is that in your budget? Is that a reality? Or are you going to go someplace and find a job at a golf course so you can, play 9 every day? I've met retired people who do that. They go find a job just so they can get access to something else, right? I met a guy, he was a flight attendant on, I forgot the airline, but he would work cover shifts, but basically he was doing that to get the perks that went along with the job so he could fly to places he wanted to go and live out his, season of his life, above and beyond what people would normally expect. So he was out there, traveling the world and doing this and doing that. He's like, yeah, I got to work about 10 days a month, and that keeps them happy. And then I get to use the benefits to go here and go there and go there. And, really fascinating plan to his life. And he's was executing it, perfectly. He set it up, had a plan, and was very specific about what he wanted, and he's living the life. So that's what, my question is what's your plan, and are you willing to do the work to live the life you want to? And these are all things I wish I knew a decade ago. I wish I knew 30 years ago, because I would have lived a different life to get here a lot sooner, and I'd probably be in a lot better shape than I am now. But it is what it is, and I'm loving my life moving forward, and that's all that really matters to me. The past is lessons. The opportunities are in front of me, and that's what matters, is what opportunities do I have, not what mistakes did I make, right? The mistakes are lessons learned, and lessons learned are very valuable as long as they stay lessons learned and don't end up being baggage or a weight or a collar I choose to put on, right? I don't need those collars. I don't need the baggage. Any mistakes I've made, yes, I will note them. I will take, different action in the future, I hope. But, why am I going to turn around and look at the mess behind me when there's a beautiful world out in front of me? I hope you do the same. Hope you have a great day. Questions and comments are always welcome. Ad hominems, or whatever that word is. Yeah, see you, bye. Ain't gonna happen. See you, bye.